What's up guys, this is Zach with Top Deck Nation, and today I thought I'd spice things up on the channel and share my experience at this past North American Internationals. If you follow our Facebook page at facebook.com/TopDeckNation, you'll know that I ended up piloting Greninja BREAK throughout the tournament. Overall, I feel that it was a solid deck choice for the event and had a lot of success with it. With that, I'd like to talk about my matchups and how I feel the deck is as we move into a different format once Burning Shadows is out in August. Now, as far as my tournament record, I ended up playing 6 rounds before dropping from the event, ultimately going 3-2-1. Normally, I would play a tournament out from start to finish, but the final match essentially put any chance of making Top Cut to rest, as the bubble for the event ended up being 20 points in each flight. Even if I would have kept playing, I could have only hit 19 points at the most, so I decided to drop and spend time sightseeing in Indianapolis with my wife instead. The first round was against Metagross Solgaleo. I had little experience against this deck, as it is a relatively new archetype that I had only encountered on PTCGO a few times. However, I did know that the deck is heavily reliant on abilities, such as Metagross GX's Geotech system that lets it quickly get powered up. Add Professor Kukui for additional damage, and suddenly Metagross can hit 170 damage a turn, the magic number to one-shot Greninja BREAK. For this match, I focused on being aggressive, using combos such as Rare Candy and Wally to pull off a turn 2 Greninja BREAK, and slowly sniping off his Beldum and Cosmog while Shadow Stitching. This proved key to winning 2-0 in the match, as even with multiple Metagross out, he was having trouble manually attaching while I used Giant Water Shuriken on the Pokemon with energy. Ultimately, this proved to be a fairly easy matchup, and Starmie was incredibly useful in ensuring I always had energy. The next round was against an all too popular deck, Espeon GX Garbodor. I had encountered the deck quite a bit online while testing with Greninja, so I had somewhat of an idea on how to approach the matchup, though it can really go either way depending on how long Garbotoxin Garbodor is in play. Though I was able to set up quickly in both games in the series, Espeon was simply a force to be reckoned with, as Divide GX took multiple knockouts, including a Frogadier and Staryu in one turn. In hindsight, perhaps Staryu simply was not worth playing in that matchup at all because of its meager 40 HP, making it a prime target for a cheap prize. Because my fill blowers were quickly discarded, I found myself at a massive disadvantage once he shut off my abilities with Garbodor. However, in the second game, I was able to conserve resources very well, preventing him from one-shotting my Pokemon with Garbodor's Trash Avalanche attack. This caused the game to swing in my favor. Though I was able to win the second game, the match would end up in a tie because we could not finish the third and final game in the series. As far as the matchup goes, I would focus on making sure you have multiple Greninja out and conserve resources whenever possible. Fortunately, Greninja is a deck that does not need to burn through item cards to get set up. A simple Dive Ball or a Wally into Frogadier for the water duplicates can go a long way. Round 3 had me paired up against Gallade Octillery. On paper, this would sound like a favorable matchup, as even with Professor Kukui, Gallade cannot one-shot my Greninja BREAK, being 20 damage short. I could simply Giant Water Shuriken twice on the active Gallade and Shadow Stitching for the KO, preventing abilities such as Abyssal Hand and Gallade's Premonition. However, I was shocked to see my opponent bridge it for a Rowlet of all things, and he was quickly able to set up a Decidueye GX on the bench thanks to the combo of Mallow and Octillery's Abyssal Hand to draw exactly what he needed each turn. He opted to use Rainbow Energy to power up Decidueye GX, but the 10 damage would certainly cost him. He was able to KO one Greninja BREAK, but with 2 Giant Water Shuriken and a Moonlight Slash for 110 counting Choice Band, I was able to one-shot the Decidueye in its tracks. Unfortunately, his lead was simply too big and we moved into the second game. This one was heavily in my favor as I got the breaks out quickly and disposed of Rowlet and Ralts before he could set up. It was a short game, and the third game proved similar. Shadow Stitching is a godsend against Gallade Octillery, as the premise of the deck is to combine the two with Mallow in order to manipulate the top cards of your deck, essentially providing you with perfect hands nearly every turn unless you can shut off the abilities or end them consistently. The following round would pair me against one of the top players of the game, Jay Lesage. He's a very accomplished player in the community, and I found him to be really friendly in person as well. He was piloting Zoroark BREAK Drampa GX, another deck that had recently emerged. This deck is particularly deadly because Zoroark BREAK is able to copy your attacks thanks to its foul play. Equally worse was the fact that I got paired up with one of the few players at the entire tournament who opted to play a lone copy of the Giratina promo that shuts off the abilities of all Pokemon BREAK. break. Now this was really the nail in the coffin, as otherwise I was able to get as many as 3 Greninja break out at a time alongside Starmie, so the matchup would have heavily been lopsided in my favor. However, without Giant Water Shuriken, Greninja is really just a glorified stage 3 that can't really compete against most competitive decks. I was able to take some prizes both games simply because of the prize trade, but Drampa GX was able to consistently hit for 170 damage thanks to Berserk and Professor Kukui. A bit discouraged, I entered round 5 apprehensively as my opponent flipped over a Talonflame, signaling that he was also playing Greninja. Technically, you could call this a mirror match, but the difference in our builds was rather significant. He did not play Starmie, nor did he play Pokemon Ranger. These proved to be the deciding factors for the game, as I was able to convincingly win 2-0 thanks to these cards. I had to dig deep to find the Pokemon Ranger, and during that time we simply exchanged Shadow Stitchings to wear down our respective Greninja breaks. The Ranger would enable me to take several KOs at a time, while Starmie assured that I had the energy to do so. Though I would advise against playing Pokemon Ranger in a tournament where generally Greninja isn't prominent, this was one game where it was extremely handy, putting me at a 3-1-1 match record. The 6th and final round I played in was against a player who lived in the Cincinnati-Covington area just a few hours away from my city. What's interesting is that he was well acquainted with a number of my own friends and had visited my local card shop before. This game would decide whether or not I would actually continue in the tournament, as I knew the bubble would be at least 20 points to assure top 64 and prize money. Though he was playing Decidueye Vileplume, I was able to take advantage of his rather slow start by getting a turn 2 Greninja with Rare Candy. I continued to use Shadow Stitching while sniping off Pokemon as he failed to draw into Forest of Giant Plants. I would win the first game in the set, but the second and third games would prove why this matchup is basically an auto loss. He was able to reliably hit the Forest of Giant Plants in Game 2 and spread damage with the Tapu Koko promo to take as many as 3 prizes a turn. Simply put, I was unable to get Greninja out whatsoever. The third game would be the most disheartening, as I made the decision to play in on the very first turn to try to get more Froakie out instead of using Wally to evolve into something with more HP. He was able to burn through his deck using multiple setups from Shaman EX to donk my lone Froakie with Tapu Lele for the win. This was the only instance throughout the tournament, however, where my deck had truly failed me, as it had performed beautifully in previous rounds with few to no consistency issues. Again, this would put me at a 3-2-1 match record and force me to drop from the biggest tournament of the season. That said, I don't regret my deck choice one bit. I think Greninja is an incredible deck that really gained a number of consistency cards with Guardians Rising, namely Tapu Lele GX and Alolan Vulpix, though I will say that I can only think of a single instance where I used the latter at internationals. I want to give a huge shout out to Xander Bennett for inspiring me to play the deck, as the skeleton of my list is based on one that he took to a local League Cup and topped with. Being able to Wonder Tag for a turn 1 Frogadier takes the deck to another level, and these cards will continue being legal as we inevitably move toward a breakthrough on standard format in the fall. Burning Shadows will bring a number of new cards to the game that I think will improve the deck. Notably, we'll be getting Guzma, a supporter card that essentially blends Lysander and Switch. This could possibly set up plays where you switch and retreat between 3 Greninja breaks, allowing you to triple Giant Water Shuriken for a whopping 180 damage before you even attack. Though this type of combo will probably be rather uncommon, the addition of Guzma opens it up nonetheless, also letting Greninja get out of special conditions like paralysis more easily. Also, the rotation itself will prove beneficial for the frog Pokemon, as Forest of Giant Plants will finally rotate and make grass type decks much weaker. Decidueye decks are essentially an auto loss for Greninja at the moment, but if these decks have to manually evolve and use Rare Candy, perhaps Greninja can outspeed them and simply use Shadow Stitching to help ensure victory. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about my tournament experience and deck choice in the comments below. I would love to hear your suggestions and feedback as we move into a format with Burning Shadows. With just a month or so until the World Championships, are there any decks that you think will emerge? Over the next few days, we'll begin our coverage with live deck battles featuring new Pokemon such as Gardevoir GX and Marshadow GX. Be sure to like this video and consider subscribing as well. We just hit 2,100 subscribers and my summer goal is to hit 2,500, so let's make it happen. But in the meantime, this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation. Thanks so much for the support, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video as always.